Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Tinnitist TV. Today, I'm happy to talk to Gabriel Judet-Weinshel of Unpinnable Butterflies. Now, that might not be your typical band name, but really it's a perfect description of him. First and foremost, Judet-Weinshel is a singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, multi-talent, and multitasker. And one spin of his new album Radio Ocean will make that pretty clear. His lyrics are literary, and they were inspired by authors like Thomas Pynchon and David Foster Wallace. Meanwhile, his songwriting is reminiscent of everyone from Paul Simon to David Byrne and others. But all of that just really sort of scratches the surface of this guy. He has tons more pots on his creative stove. He's a professional photographer and videographer who has shot and filmed plenty of your and his favorite artists. He's also a screenwriter, a director, and a film composer who's made one feature film of his own, has worked on several others for other people, and has a whole bunch of them in the works. And if all that creative juggling isn't enough, he can also juggle for real. It's what he used to do for a living before he started doing all these other jobs. Somehow or another, he was kind enough to juggle his schedule so that we could talk about his new album, all of his other projects, his celebrity encounters, and tons more. Enjoy. Congratulations on getting this album out. It must be quite a thrill.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you for having me on. Yes, it's both a thrill and a relief to finally finish something that took so long in terms of the gestation.
How long did this take? Because it's been like what, 15 years since your last album of songs, basically, as opposed to compositions.
Indeed, I tend to get sidetracked. Scott Healy, our producer, was very patient along the way, but we, in all honesty, we started recording in the summer of 2009 in Los Angeles, and that year, I remember my then girlfriend, now wife, Pilar, and I were in Puerto Rico and on vacation for the holidays. I think it was the prior winter. And I said, this year, meaning 2009, I'm going to record a record and make a feature film. And here we are, 2021, and I finished both at last.
Better late than never.
Better late than never. So I kind of got sidetracked with this feature film, which was right, quite ambitious and involved. And then I did two other film soundtracks in the meantime. So this record was always on the back burner.
Now, when you are in that situation, is it hard to go back and pick up the thread?
Oh, that's a good question. Momentarily, it takes a while to kind of get back, but I find if the project still has vibrancy, it's sort of like, if you imagine, old friendships, I have a lot of friends, and as I'm sure you do too, live in other areas. You haven't seen them for a few years for whatever reasons, and you can really pick up where you left off if that connection is still there. So I think I still always felt a connection to the material. And I knew, every time I would see Scott, I'd promise him, and I was promising myself at the same time, we will finish this project. Mm-hmm. But we had very ambitious goals for it, and there were all these little pieces we wanted to get that were, I remember, like on this track, Sell Me the Morning, we wanted a marxophone, which is this sort of obscure instrument that Jason Orm, the guitarist, played, and he had it, and it was like tracking him down when he was touring, finding a pause in his tour to get him to record that. So it was all these little pieces that made the record, take so long. And then obviously having all these other projects going concurrently.
Yeah. Well, and your music is, these are not songs that, someone's sitting down and writing in 10 minutes. Your music sounds like it takes a lot of thought and a lot of planning and a lot of preparation and maybe even a lot of like revision and editing and going down one path only to find that you want to change in the middle. Am I right on that? Or?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm much more of I think there was that famous meeting between, Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen, and, they both have a lot of mutual admiration, and Leonard Cohen asked Bob Dylan, how long did it take you to write? I can't remember. Was it one of his epic songs, Girl from the North Country, whatever. One of his masterpieces. And right. Dylan was like 15 minutes. And then asked the reverse question of Leonard, and he said, 13 years or whatever, and I'm much more, not to compare myself to either one of them, but in terms of, I think there are artists who it'll be that momentary flash of inspiration, and whatever happens, it's there, sort of the Jackson Pollock, I'm just going to do this thing in the moment. Although actually I was just reading Pollock apparently it was actually much more meditative for him. Yeah. Although his art, you feel like it's very in the moment. Anyway, so I'm the latter. I go back, I tinker, I revise. There's many drafts of a different song, the lyrics I pour over. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
I mean, what's the longest or the most work you've ever put into one song in that respect? I mean, are there songs that you've rewritten, 10 times, 15 times until you just get the nuance? Exactly.
I mean, I'll put it this way. There's a tune from 2005 that I haven't finished, that the hook, the chorus just is coming back to me. I'm like, I have to go back and finish that song. So what are we at? 17 years, something like that. Yeah.
Getting there,
yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so what's your process in that, because again, I think a lot of people think of songwriting as, you sit down with a guitar or a piano and, something comes to you, et cetera, but yours sounds more deliberate and laborious. Are you able to, let's say, get up on a Monday morning and go, you know what, I'm going to spend a couple hours with that song from 17 years ago and just, kind of work through it and see what you get? Or is it waiting for the bolt of lightning to hit?
No, I think I'm much more, I schedule my songwriting time, and sometimes inspiration strikes, and sometimes you're staring at the page until blood comes out of your eyes, as they say. And but I'm pretty disciplined in that I do make time for it, and whatever I'm working on, I go back to. There's right now I've been working on this musical that's I'm hoping for it to be a film as well. So I've been recording demos for that. So I tackle that, hopefully every day, unless I have a shoot or something else that conflicts. And in terms of the process, I don't have it. I think some folks will start with the lyrics and the music comes, and some folks will start with the music and the lyrics come after that. And for me, I think I've done both. Some tunes it starts with a chord progression or a melody. Sometimes it's the harmonic structure that leads. Sometimes it's just a melody in my head that's the hook of the tune, or that's the first verse of the tune. So I think it's mostly you're trying to follow that thing that keeps you interested. I think if you as a songwriter are not interested, it's not worth pursuing, because it's probably somebody else is not going to be interested. But then if there's something vital enough in that, I can return to it usually over years if it takes years.
Are you your own worst critic, or are there?
Probably, although the internet is a vicious place.
Yeah, well, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
I'm sure I could find somebody worse, but I'm quite hard on myself, and I try to just block out those voices either way, because I tend to, I think a lot of it's not really one's business to think about. You have to apply a certain craftsmanship and a certain critique to the work, and then you have to let it go. That's what I try to do. I'm terrible at doing that. I'm constantly obsessing about, this film I released a few years back. That was a difficult process because it got very mixed reviews, and I'm not immune to that stuff. You feel it, and it hurts, and you're very attached to the thing.
I would think that only gets ramped up too when you've spent 10 years, 12 years, 15 years of laboriously working on something, because people don't know that, right? They see, oh, here's an album called Radio Ocean, and I'm going to listen to it, and they don't necessarily, and probably don't know the whole backstory of all the blood and sweat and tears and toil that went into you crafting that one little turn of phrase, and they just put it on and listen to it and go, yeah,
it's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
Do you? So I would think, you mentioned being excited and thrilled to finally get this music out. I would think also there's a lot of trepidation in terms of you've been able to live with this, so long that putting it out there has got to be kind of a scary proposition too, to wait and see what the world thinks of it.
Absolutely. I mean, the safety to it is you know, toiling in relative obscurity. You're not. It's not. So far, John Perellis hasn't, you know, called back or said, you know, weighed in either way. That said, you know, the bit of reviews that we have had have been really kind, and that's been really gratifying. But at the same time, I think it's a double-edged sword to allow opinion one way or the other to influence one, because you can kind of ride that sort of narcissistic you know, roller coaster either way, right? It's
Right.
you're equally exposed to good stuff and bad stuff, and none of it is really then it just becomes about you, you know, like, and I'm trying to get away about that and make it much more about what can I contribute and how can this maybe enrich somebody else's life. But it doesn't mean I'm not immune, and you know, I just try to keep. I once had a really helpful conversation with a film producer, writer, director who kindly called me after I'd gotten this really bad review. Actually, when the film Seven Splinters, this film right here,
Right. Exactly.
came out, we just got savaged in the LA Times, and it was like, you know, it really hurt. And I think I remember I was in LA at the time, and I remember driving around, you know, the Hollywood Hills, just sort of feeling abject and desolate, and you know, allowing those words to really penetrate. And this producer said, you know, whatever you do, just keep making something else, and that's sort of your immunity.
Right.
You know, he had been through it, and I had another friend, also a film director, who had similarly dealt with mixed reviews. And it's like, the thing you have in your power is to keep making stuff, and it's not up for you to decide if it's good or bad. You don't have control over how it's received.
And everybody, I mean, it doesn't matter. Think of any hero you've got, they got a bad review, and sometimes a deservedly bad review. I mean,
absolutely, absolutely.
Nobody hits a home run every time.
No, and the zeitgeist is so fickle too. So sometimes it's more about, you know, timing, right?
Yeah. Exactly. 10 years from now, you know, things that we, you know, hated are become, you know, appreciated, and vice versa. You mentioned having done a couple of soundtracks in the interim for your own film and for some other work. Obviously, that's a somewhat different discipline from songwriting in the traditional sense. Do you approach them differently? How does it work for you? And can you take lessons from one to the other, or have you?
Yeah, it's definitely a different discipline in that you're certainly not the star of the show there. It's not about there's no lyrics, and it's not about trying to, you know, I think with a song, you know, a singer-songwriter song, you're trying to capture people's attention fully. With a film score, you're supposed to be additive, and you're supposed to augment the film. And that has been a process of learning, because my impulse is always to try to show off, you know, is always to try the hardest thing, to, you know, use the kitchen sink. And the first score I did was actually for my own film, and I think it suffered in some ways, and some of the cues for being too busy and, you know, and ornate. And I was so excited to get to score this film that I was trying everything I possibly could. And, you know, we had odd time signatures, and we had all these different instruments, and the score on its own, I'm quite proud of, but I can see objectively that at points in the film, it may steal the focus from the narrative of the film. So I think that's the first thing with film scoring, is less is more. The second film I scored, From Baghdad to Brooklyn, I feel like I got better at that. And also I was working with a director who was giving me notes. So I would submit cues to her. And oftentimes the cues that she liked the most were the simplest things. You know, it was just a very simple single instrument. And that's so hard to do. You know, you listen to Trent Reznor's score for The Social Network, and that hook that won him the Oscar is the simplest, a single instrument, just a few notes, you know, or the theme to Jaws or something like that, but it's hard to do.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, even think of a classic rock song, you know, to some, you know, one of those 2-chord things, Smoke on the Water is, you know, nothing, right? But it's ingrained in all of our DNA, you know?
Yeah.
So you also do a lot of photography. Was it music first for you and then photography, or vice versa, or has it always been kind of intermingled?
I think I was just one of those kids. I had really supportive parents who were, my mother's a painter, and arts were always, abounding in the house. And I think around the same time we had a piano growing up. So I was always, as long as I remember, I was just, tinkering around on the piano. My father played and plays guitar. And I think this is the early 80s, I always had a huge desire to make films, and watched films abundantly. This is the early days of VHS, so you have this amazing thing, you could go to a store and bring the movie home with you, and pause it.
You don't look old enough to have had a VCR.
That's very kind. No, we saved up as a family. I remember we put money into this pot to buy one of the first video cameras, and this is back in the day when you would have to. They were tube video cameras, so they were, way pre-digital. This is all analog tape, and not only that, but the camera itself was separate from the VHS deck. So you had to carry the deck on your shoulder, and then you had the camera, and you connected it. And I was probably about 6 or 7, so this thing was like as big as my head. Yeah. So we saved up for that. So I think to answer your question, it was all around the same time, and very commingled. I didn't make a separation between music and film. It was just, this is stuff I want to make, and I would put my friends in these movies. And then I think even at the beginning, I was, playing stuff on the piano that I would record to put in the movies. And
right.
Yeah.
It must help. Because you photograph a lot of musicians. You shoot videos. Having that working knowledge of not only the mechanics of how music is made, but the creative side of it too. That's gotta, I would think, help in some regard, even though they seem like such kind of separate disciplines. Does it come in? Are there ways in which you can see that it makes your job easier or makes the results better?
I hope so. First of all, there's a natural inherent interest.
Right.
I've been really lucky in that I've been able to meet a lot of my heroes. Doing the DP and the photography work, and I do think as a musician, you photograph music a different way. You have I've shot a lot of concerts, so you have hopefully a better sense of when the guitar solo is going to happen. And I know as a musician, I want to see the fretboard much more than I want to see what the right hand is doing, and certain things like that. So you go to where you want to see it as a musician, and hopefully that translates for every viewer. That so I think in that sense, yeah, it's probably been somewhat helpful.
Do you think the photography influences your music in any way?
Yeah, I think it's more the filmmaking. No, they both fertilize each other. I think both mediums in a way share a lot. I think they're really twin mediums in that they're both visceral, and they're both, although they both can involve language, lyrics to a song or dialogue on a film. I think their primary energy comes from something that's that comes before language. That is much more connected to dreams. They're both very nonlinear in terms of even like if you're editing a film or you're working in Pro Tools, the way you arrange bits, it's all about a kind of bricolage and a kind of collage making that's very different than a painting that happens. The viewer takes it in all at once. And there's just, I feel like the two mediums are more tied than anything. I think film and music are more tied than, say, theater and film, if that makes sense. Theater is so much driven by words,
Right.
I don't know. But so I think in that sense, I was just working on a script this morning, and so much of that is what I'm listening to as I always listen to music. So I'll create a playlist, and that'll influence what I'm writing. Yeah, and I think it really goes back and forth both ways.
Do you create a playlist based on, if you were writing something that was, say, a cop story, would you select, the Peter Gunn theme and things that are sort of...
Sure. Sometimes it's not as direct as that, but it's whatever is sort of the emotional core, or what I think the emotional core is of the film. Because this film's sort of very inchoate right now, but there are certain songs that I'm responding to that immediately trigger images in my head. And that's how it's always been, that in terms of like the music videos I've done, it's as simple as you put the song on and what are the images you see, and you write them down, and hopefully the band digs that concept. Sometimes the band's like, that's not at all what this is about. So there's a compromise there. But I feel like, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, that there's something about listening to music that immediately evokes images.
Well, it works for Quentin Tarantino. So, I mean, he famously blasts music all the time when he's writing.
Totally. And I think like Scorsese is the same way, like such, his musical choices. There's a bunch of directors that music is really key for.
Do the people you're photographing know that you're also a musician? Do you? I know nobody would. You're not going to go, hey, listen to my album, Elvis Costello. But
right.
Do you? Are you very conscious of wanting to keep those sort of, keep it compartmentalized and keep it separate? Or
I mean, I think I have a certain. I think it's just about being tactful. There's certain situations where it can naturally come up. Obviously, if you're shooting Bruce Springsteen and you have, like, we once shot his rehearsal at the Apollo,
let's listen to this, Bruce.
It's like, because I'm sure nobody's ever tried to give him a CD, right?
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah. So, I think it's just about like treating everybody as other people and trying to imagine like, what their day is like, and maybe what is appropriate. But there's certainly been times where if it comes up organically, I've shared that. I try not to, force it on anyone. I try not to, to be overly schmoozy in that sense. But
in terms of meeting your heroes, I mean, I've met plenty of mine over the years, and sometimes it's everything you want it to be,
right? And
sometimes it is definitely not everything you want it to be.
I want to hear some of your stories here, if that's okay. I'm curious about both, well,
here's the thing. I've met enough of them that the ones I haven't met, I'm kind of okay with, because again, you just never know.
You never know. You don't want to have that illusion or that idea spoiled. Yeah, because it can be heartbreaking.
And I mean, but I've also done enough, and I'm sure you have too, that when you have one of those sort of less than stellar incidents, I kind of go, well, that person's probably just having a bad day.
Completely,
the same way I have, and you have.
Sure.
What I wanted to ask though is can you tell me about one time when it was everything you wanted it to be? Like somebody who you were kind of going, oh boy, I'm going to get to meet so and so, and came out of it going, oh, thank God, he was a nice person. This was a good, exchange.
There was a period of time, we actually did this a few times. I think I got to shoot U2 like 2 or 3 times. There's a period I was working with this director named Alex Coletti. He's one of the guys who started like MTV Unplugged and works with a lot of sort of larger marquee acts like that. And I was lucky enough to be able to bring in a small video crew to shoot what's just called a piece to tape. I think one of the things was like, Bono wanted to give a message to Mikhail Gorbachev on his 80th birthday. And so a few things like that. And I think we did another announcement for like an Irish magazine. And this was all during a period where the band was in New York at a secret location, recording a record. I think this was, in the early 2010, 2011, around then. So that was, I was very nervous. Actually, the very first time was we shot them for a TV show. We set up in a room right by where they were. They were in a sort of green room, and we had everything ready. When you're shooting people of that caliber, you obviously want everything ready. You don't want them waiting on you. And the first time I remember they were listening to, I think, a mix of one of their early tunes, and I was like, they're playing U2. It's U2 playing U2, and that was funny. But then the times that we shot them, every time they were absolutely lovely. But I think it's the most starstruck I've been. I think just there's something about that level of sort of global superstardom, and then you're seeing the actual people in real life and you're interacting with them. And then I think one of the times we shot them, they wanted to see the footage, so they brought us back into the studio where they were recording, and we were ushered through guitars and amps in this sort of secret lair of theirs, and they were just all hanging around in the kind of kitchen of the studio, showing them the stuff. And and luckily they liked the footage, so that was good. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that
I
would
think
be.
that was they were absolutely lovely. I mean, to be honest, I don't think I've had any really bad experiences with folks. I think I think that's part of the reason I'm not trying to foist CDs on people too,
Sure,
because I think that's
yeah.
where I try to be polite and professional. But
Yeah.
for the most part, I find usually it's the celebrities who are the most established and most famous who are quite lovely to deal with, I think.
That's I would second that. It's often
Yeah,
for me it's the people who are like brand new, who
yeah.
are just so thrilled and so happy to be there, and are
Mm,
really genuinely happy to talk to you and share things.
yeah,
And then they go through if they get popular, a lot of them go through this middle period where they start believing their own hype, you
sure,
know, and that's when
sure.
they have these people whispering in their ear and all sorts of, and I've been
Right.
doing it long enough that I've actually talked to people at the beginnings of their career and in the middle, and then after maybe whatever, 5, 10 years, even longer, where they've gone through all that and been at the top of the charts, and then, put out the album nobody likes,
Right.
played to the empty halls, had the comeuppance, and then come around to sort of getting, oh, okay, this is actually, and they go back to being appreciative of
Right.
wanting to talk to people and wanting publicity, and then
Hopefully, right. They have to have
yeah, well, too,
that fall from grace. Yeah, but
yeah,
hopefully it doesn't have evolution. I mean, I think it's worth acknowledging that the whole process is very deranged. Like we're at this
mhm,
very odd stage in human history where this idea of, I mean, this wasn't
celebrity.
around 300
Yeah.
years. Yeah, and it's been amplified. It's been put on steroids by the Facebooks and Instagrams, and I think everybody is affected by that. Everybody, we all want whatever that shiny thing is, and it's
Mhm.
very intoxicating. It's very addictive. I'm certainly vulnerable to it, like anyone. But it messes with your head. I don't think it's healthy for any of us.
Oh no, fame is awful, I think, in
It's
in
awful.
general. Yeah,
And why do people crave it?
I don't
Why
know,
do you want that
why
thing?
do you crave it?
Well, I don't think I crave. I
No, not
think
in the
if I'm,
same sense, right? Not in the Britney
yeah,
Spears sense. Yeah,
no, that, I mean, poor,
yeah,
that sounds awful, especially,
yeah,
or if you look at what happens to child stars,
right.
and sort of the gauntlet they're put through. I don't think I crave that. What I crave is time and resources and access to keep doing my work.
Hmm.
I think what I would love is some sort of to arrive at a place where I'm able to communicate with some of the people that I admired most and be able to share with them and be in that community.
Right.
I think what is painful for those who haven't succeeded or whatever they define as success is you're not able to share in that community in a way you might want to. I think, I envy the friends I have who have succeeded more, who they can call up so and so or send something to so and so and
Mhm.
ask them about this, and
Right.
you're just and the other thing is, as much as I think I'm still very lucky in the work I do for mercenary purposes, some days I, don't want to maybe shoot this corporate gig or shoot this
Right.
thing, and I want to focus on my own stuff. And I'm certainly envious of those folks who can just wake up and focus on their own art. And that seems so. So it's really that time is really is something I'd love to have more of.
Do you think though, because I think you're kind of in a better position, and when it comes to fame or celebrity or success in any, however you want to quantify it, because I mean, you're a little older, you're not a teenager, you've been doing this for quite a while, and also you've seen, you get to peek behind the curtain regularly.
Sure.
So because for a lot of young musicians, it starts out, I think, as something, sort of some sort of vague thing that they think they want, and then the next thing they know, they're on the roller coaster, and it's going 100 miles an hour, and they can't get off, and they don't know what to do. Whereas I would think you're in sort of a better position, were one of these songs to, suddenly become, a viral hit or whatever, and all of a sudden, you get put onto that train, you would go, oh, okay, well, I've seen how this goes,
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't think you'd find me, on five various drugs, at the top of some hotel room, contemplating, yeah,
but what
I
would what
think
would you waste your money on? Because you would waste your money on something stupid. Everybody does. What's the dumbest thing you would buy?
I probably buy better camera equipment, right? I probably buy more tools. So I don't know if that's a waste. There's not a lot of stuff. I'm not I'm not that into clothes. I'm not that into things. It's more tools.
A fleet of rainbow colored Mercedes or something.
No, I know nothing. I wouldn't even know what cars to buy. I think, probably, we'd probably eat out a bit more. Although we do quite fine in that department as well. My wife's a chef, so that's we consider that research. Yeah. But yeah, I think it would just be more tools. I've been wanting, I have a very nice microphone that I saved up for, so stuff like that.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I think the benefit of being a bit older is if things do change in that sense, one is more grounded, and you've sorted out a bit more who you are, and right. I have a wonderful wife who keeps me very grounded in terms of
Speaking of your harshest critic.
That's still me. She's much kinder than I am, but
good for you. Yeah. You made the right choice. Yeah,
but she's also very honest, so that's good.
Good. Yeah. Is she the first person who hears your songs?
Sometimes. I mean, she'll certainly hear stuff through the door. Right. I have a cello there, which I partially learned how to play, very, very haltingly, to do one of the scores, and she calls that the donkey. If I have to bring the donkey out, so she's unfortunately subject to all of these sounds.
You mentioned you're working on a musical. Again, yes. That seems like another sort of tangential kind of shift in terms of how you approach the creation of this. How's it going, and what more can you tell me about it?
So I've been working on this again, sort of on the back burner. I'm always juggling things concurrently, so I have a few other movie scripts as well, but this one I think I started in maybe 2016, and I've written 23, 24 tunes for it, and then I've written a lot of different iterations of the script. It's a very small film in certain ways. It's only 3 characters. It takes place in a sort of dystopic, futuristic universe, which sadly is becoming much more similar to our current situation, where a kind of unified force, which is basically an advanced version of the internet, has taken over people's minds, and it's about both that and sort of the environmental degradation, sort of a late stage capitalist dystopic nightmare.
So it's a documentary, basically.
Yeah, it's basically a documentary. Exactly. Yeah, I have to finish this film because otherwise it's going to be like a historical piece. Exactly. But it's a musical. And I found a location, this old, it's a brutalist architectural piece, this one of a kind house that was built in Italy that's now abandoned. It's right outside of Rome. So I've been reaching out to these architects who are trying to refurbish it with the hope of trying to shoot there. So it's a fairly ambitious project. There's another film I'm hoping to shoot before that. But yeah, so there's that film. That film's it's actually ultimately a love story, the futuristic dystopic musical. And then I have another film that's a smaller piece about a musician. So that deals also sort of with environmental degradation. I mean, it's sort of, again, very hard to ignore the climate emergency that we're in right now. And I think I wake up on a lot of days trying to figure out how on earth can art be relevant in this current moment, right. And what is the art one is making, and how can it contribute or help the world in some way?
In terms of having all these different projects on the go all the time, I mean, is it that you just sort of have too many ideas, or you have a short attention span, or you just sort of, because so many things take so long to complete, that you just kind of, able to
all
bounce
of the above. All
okay.
of the above. Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, doesn't it also? I mean, I think for the layperson, you would think, well, geez, you're never going to get anything finished if wouldn't it be better to sort of pick one and kind of full steam ahead with it?
That's yes.
Okay.
So yes, I think it would be better, Daryl, if I could focus more. Yes,
you got to the core.
Yeah, this is why the record took over 10 years. Yes, I'm trying to focus more. Okay. I'm also trying to do things that are simpler, more streamlined.
Failing miserably at it. I can tell.
Failing miserably, yeah. So it's I'm trying to juggle way too many things at once.
Okay.
But
you're a juggler.
Yes, that is also something I did. Yes, is juggling. So yeah, I guess for folks who don't know what we're talking about, I used to juggle on the street to pay the bills. So so that is another thing in terms of juggling.
What else do you do? Ballet? Hot
No,
air
I'm a
ballooning?
well. There's dancing in that one video, but I would not say I'm a professional dancer in any way. I'm very bad at planning, in terms of planning trips. Planning, I barely show up on time to things, but I'm able to do that. But I'm often very barely functional in certain ways. So I'm these are
That's a glowing
resume.
Exactly. Put that on your dating profile. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was not a good waiter. Concurrently with juggling in the street, there was one summer I got a side gig in New York as a waiter, and I found it very stressful. It gave me a new appreciation for folks who wait tables. I didn't drop anything. That was the one thing I could say. But it's man, that's a hard job. I don't know if you've ever tried it.
No, I've never. I never would.
Oh my gosh! I mean, because you're trying to keep so many things in your head at once. You're keeping the menu in your head at
and
the same time.
And it's customer service, and people are
absolutely
unpredictable. And again, somebody comes in there in a bad mood, and it's got nothing to do with you, but you got to deal with it.
Yeah, the boss of the restaurant said that I had a very kind and anxious energy, which seemed about right.
I could kind of see that. So back to Radio Ocean. One of the things that I love about it, and one of the many things I love about it is, I mean, it's such a great sound. You've got all these fabulous musicians on it, a lot of first call people.
Sure.
Now, when you're writing these songs, for a lot of musicians, I talk to a lot of people who go, I write these songs and I can hear them in my head, but I don't have the skill, or I don't know people who can, make the music sound the way I want it to, or I don't have the production skills. Do the songs sound better in your head, or when you're actually hearing, the best musicians in the world play them?
No, I think it sounds better with those musicians. I mean, that was.
So they're actually improving on what you've done.
Yeah, I mean, I for tunes, I always write demos, and part of my songwriting process is usually I'm working with Pro Tools and recording stems in the moment and reacting to that. So that's a place where technology is really helpful. I think in the early days, before that was sort of as facile as it is now, I would I'd write with a guitar and writing down lyrics on paper, and I still do that, but what's wonderful now is you can very quickly lay down something that sounds fairly, polished enough to at least be able to share that with a producer and say, this is what I'm thinking. And there are drum loops and, all sorts of tools for making something that sounds, realized enough at least to get to the next step. So for both singer-songwriter records, I was lucky enough to work with Scott Healy, who his day job was playing as the pianist on the Conan O'Brien show. But he also works and has worked for years as a session player, both in New York, and now he's moved to LA, and he knows everybody. So the first record, it was like he just opened up his Rolodex, and we got Bakiti Kumalo from Paul Simon's Graceland, and Steve Hawley, who had played in Wings, and Sean Pelton, who's this legendary session drummer and played on both records. So that was just incredible. And, I was immediately spoiled. I had gone from, as in my 20s, playing around town, playing in various bands and, hiring or playing with whoever locally I could access, to playing with these, these musicians of international renown. And it was, I think the metaphor like playing tennis is apt, that it suddenly becomes easier to play with folks like that. Suddenly you're not trying to diagnose, well, this isn't quite working, like we're not finding a groove. It's like it just happens, and and you're lucky enough to be along for the ride.
But is it also kind of intimidating? I would think it might take a while for you to become relaxed enough in their presence to go, hey Lee, can you kind of play this bass note instead of that bass note?
Absolutely. Yeah, the first day I was a wreck. We were recording at Avatar in 2006, I think. And I was putting new strings on my guitar, and all these, session cats are coming in, and I broke a string just trying to do something very basic. I was talking to Scott at the time, and he looks at me. He's like, "I'm not impressed." So I relaxed. You know, again, they're just people, and they were all lovely, and they had a rapport with Scott. So you know, you were just, and I wasn't pretending to be anyone other than who I was. It was like I was this lucky kid who had gone from recording demos in my bedroom to being with these people, and I was the excitement kind of carried me through. And then the next time it was easier. And, you know, I think a few times in, I was able to say, well, actually, let's try it this way. And you realize it's still, you know, you're still speaking the same language.
Right.
They just speak it better than you.
What do you want people to take away from the album? What experience do you want them to have with it? Or maybe how do you want them to experience it? What's the best way to listen to this?
I mean, I just hope it moves folks. You know, I think ultimately it's both a really personal record, and it's also a record where there's bits of the larger world, sort of geopolitical questions about climate, political questions. And, you know, but I hope it connects with folks. I hope it, you know, hopes it helps people get through their day a little better. You know,
well, there are some songs to me, it sounds like that because I listen mostly with headphones.
Oh,
and it's a really great experience that way. But there are also songs that are, you know, sort of belong, you know, in a public space through speakers. It's got a nice experience. Yeah. You know,
there's a lot of up-tempo tunes. Actually, one of my regrets about the record is we didn't have like another ballad. Really, the only ballad is Roses, the last track. But yeah, it's a danceable record. You know, I hope there's some tunes people can put on in the background at a dinner party, whatnot. I hope it can work on both levels, you know.
Are you hoping to be able to tour it a lot? Or, I mean, it seems like, again, you've got so many things on the go. Do you have the ability to sort of devote the amount of time and energy to, you know, playing regularly?
That is still in question. I think part of, obviously, there's this thing going on. So, you know, I think if in normal times a tour would be much more obvious, and now it's, you know, probably a more curtailed, maybe more regional tour. Right now, all the effort is just sort of trying to get it out there digitally, and, you know, doing some press for it. But down the road, I definitely want to, you know, do some live shows. You know, I think the Delta variant kind of threw things for a loop, because things for everyone, things were opening up. And I think had you asked me this in June, I'd be like, yep, we're going to do it. And now there were a few dates I actually had to cancel or put a hold on as a result. But hopefully 2022 there's a bit of touring.
Aside from all the projects you've got on the go that you want to complete, is there some sort of wish list, you know, ultimate dream thing you'd like to accomplish, or somebody you'd like to work with, or some other sort of, you know, pie in the sky
oh my gosh,
on your list?
I mean, I think just in general, a life where I could make feature films and then put out records in between, and that there's some commingling of those two. That is the dream. So I think it's more about, again, that sort of time and resources I was talking about that would come with a little greater success and recognition.
So you want to be Robbie Robertson and Martin Scorsese, basically?
Absolutely, yeah. Something between them.
That's not asking for much.
No, not at all. Not at all. You know, I'm lucky with the life I have, and the fact that I'm still have, you know, a lot more time than a lot of folks to do this stuff I love. So it's also important to be, you know, grateful for what's happening around you at the moment. But that's what I would hope for. I mean, there's a huge list that we probably don't have time for of folks I'd love to collaborate, both in film and music.
Shoot a few my way. I don't. We got time.
I mean,
I'd like to hear who you're interested in.
I mean, in terms of directors, like I love Julian Schnabel. I was so sad about Lynn Shelton's passing. I thought she was really special, also a Seattleite. So, you know, I love her. Same with Leonard Cohen. Obviously, I had hoped to work with him. I'd still love to, you know, work with Paul Simon, or at least get to meet him. I'm a big Wilco fan. Been listening to a lot of Phoebe Bridgers. So, I mean, the list is so long in terms of the music world. So, yeah, I'll stop there for now. But
that's a good list. Those are all good names. Here's another thing I want to ask, if you ever do sleep.
I do. I'm able to sleep. I mean, intermittently, but yeah, I do sleep. I mean, shoot days are often very early, so sometimes those require
Sure.
less sleep. But I do get some sleep. Thank
Amazed.
you.
I
Thank you
don't
for
know.
your
I can't
concern.
imagine when or where or how, but I'll take your word for it, sir.